Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Certificates and Certifications playlist with the training, learning, and development community. Thanks for popping in. Just a quick shout out to everybody that is in live so far. Jane, of course, thanks for coming in this morning. Susan, Mark, Deborah, good morning. Thanks for popping into the live show. So we're closing out this playlist today with our guest, Matt Pierce, who is a longtime friend of TLDC and somebody that I was really, really excited to get into this particular series because, as you guys probably know, we started out talking about graduate certificates. We got a nice overview from Christy Tucker when we started our first episode. Then we had Boise State University. Two of the professors came in, Lisa and Anthony, and we moved on from there and started talking about industry certifications. And then we had Deidre Welcome talk about all the certifications that she has, and in particular the ATD CPLP, which is now the CPTD. Then we got specifics about that from Alex Salas, who talked about what that change meant for everybody. And so now we're here, and what I was really excited about is I wanted to find somebody that has actually built certifications and worked in designing one. And I especially like it because Matt also has experience. This particular certification isn't necessarily like an L&D one. You know, it's definitely relevant for other things as well. So, Matt, thanks for coming in again today. I'm excited to talk about this. And let's start out and maybe just talk about a little bit about who you are, what you do, give for the folks that don't know who you are, like what your background is.
Yeah, sure. So thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. Super excited to talk about these because these have been fun projects and hard projects to work on. So my background is I have been at Techsmith for almost 14 years now. Started off, before that I was doing basic kind of L&D stuff at a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, a lot of health and safety, how not to die stuff, which is always kind of interesting. I knew nothing about the engineering side, but had to work on stuff. So kind of that SME work relationship. Got my job at Techsmith, started off really as an instructional designer, creating tutorial videos on products like Camtasia and Snagit, Screencast.com, did a whole bunch of stuff for that. When that led into a management position where I was able to manage our learning training team that turned into training, documentation, and technical support teams. So I led those teams for quite a while here at Techsmith. And then I made a strange jump over to marketing, where I actually was leading a video team, which then I collected a lot of teams at the time. It seemed like video team became the video team in social media. And then I took on also PR and on top of that. So did that for a couple of years and then went back to the learning development stuff, where some kind of organizational changes started happening. We transitioned with the new CEO about 5 years ago, and that opened up some opportunities for me to take on my current role as learning and video ambassador for Techsmith, which is a weird title, which encompasses a lot of the things I just talked about. So I do a lot of things like learning development with the Techsmith Academy, run that, build out our Camtasia certification, helped with our Snagit certifications. But also then I go out and speak a lot, do a lot of, just kind of representing the company, talking about video production, talking about using images in learning development and other places as well. So, and whatever else they ask me to do, because, I'll clean the toilets if that's what they need. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, and that was actually one of my questions, that your role as a learning and video ambassador, it seems like it's a pretty convenient title for somebody that represents a product. So, yeah, and it sounds like you just kind of are you the face of Techsmith Camtasia and
I'm not really the face, but I do a lot of stuff where it's somewhat equivalent, right? We try not to have just one person. There's lots of fantastic people at Techsmith doing stuff on behalf of Techsmith. But with my background, I tend to be in the L&D space a lot, at a lot of the conferences. Because of my background, I have some of that knowledge. I don't know if I'd call it expertise as much as I have knowledge. I have a master's degree in instructional systems technology from Indiana University. So it's not like I'm a dummy about it. I just, I'm doing lots of different things and find myself being able to represent Techsmith fairly often.
Excellent. So, and just just to be transparent, just so you guys know, I am a huge Techsmith fan. I have my own personal copy of Camtasia that I use on a regular basis, and at my work, I'm one of those Snagit guys that I'm constantly being questioned by people like, how did you do that? What did you use to do that? Like, yeah, I'm using Snagit. Ask for a copy, get a copy. In fact, I was just slacking with somebody at work about that yesterday. I'm like, yeah, just get a copy of Snagit. They, hit up IT, they'll get it to you, because people are always wondering like, how, that's an amazing screenshot. How did you do that so quick? I'm constantly using that thing. So, so big fan of the product.
Thank you.
Reason why I'm extra excited to have you here. Now, let's talk a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about the Techsmith Academy. I know that that's something that you're responsible for.
Yeah, so anyone can go check it out. It's a free resource, academy.techsmith.com. And the idea behind the Techsmith Academy is, as we were forming and shaping my role, we talked a lot about community. And especially at TLDC, we know the value of community, right? Like, we know how important it is to connect with people. And we were looking at kind of other organizations and how they've built community. And I kind of came to the realization, like, we're not just going to build a platform and be like, hey, now we've got a community, let's chat. That doesn't work really well, especially what we find that most things that we've done in the past turns into, like, people want to talk about the problems that they're having. They want to ask, and that's fine. And we like solving people's problems, but that wasn't our vision for community. And so what we said, like, I've got this whole document from, I think, 2016. I laid out all these blocks, and each block was kind of a piece of what I thought would be the strategy to get us to community. And one of those blocks was this idea that we have a lot of knowledge beyond just about our products. So, product being Camtasia, Snagit, some other stuff, that we feel really strongly that we should be sharing that knowledge. And so we said, okay, what's the base kind of part of that? And so what we did is we started creating content, and we launched a platform built on SkillJar, which is a kind of an externally facing, they wouldn't want me calling it an LMS, but it's kind of like an LMS. It's a platform to deliver courses, manage users, do those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put out some basic kind of content, and then we've been slowly adding more content, including, when we were at the TLDC conference, we actually did interviews with people. We took those interviews, boiled down a bunch of the great, fantastic things people said. There's so much of it, boiled it down, put it into a couple courses, and then released the full interviews. But along with that, like, things about like writing scripts, creating storyboards, shooting video, kind of basic tips and ideas. More recently, we launched 9 tips for better screencasting. I've got a whole, like, a 30 video course that we've been working on for quite a while that hopefully will get launched sometime. Wow. I won't put any dates because I don't know when it's been sitting for a while. We had some issues getting resource and priority on it, but so we're really trying to beef that up. We're talking to some external folks to actually add content to deliver and kind of expand the idea, because most of it's video based. So what can you do with images? What can you do with kind of graphic design stuff, just to learn these kind of key fundamentals? Because whether you're in learning and development or any other area, these are fundamentals. Like, we feel like, video is a key thing for people to communicate, especially nowadays when you look what's happening in the world and like events are getting shut down. Like, video could be a really powerful way to extend your reach if you can't get out of your office. And even if you can, it's a great way to communicate. So there's lots that we hope just to help people to do. And that's why we did it.
No,
so it's free.
I agree. And I think especially now, like you were saying, with kind of the way that the workplace may be changing, and you might see a kind of a renewed, or you will see a renewed kind of priority in video, and being able to, kind of just quickly record something. But if you go to Techsmith Academy, you will see, you'll find the kind of information that you need to know about being able to just kind of quickly make a recording, and get it out to your team or to whatever, because I think that, especially the remote work world is it's just going to explode right now. People are really it's going to be in high demand. So that's great. So the Academy, how does that kind of coincide with the Camtasia certification, or does it at all?
So they're really very separate things. When we were looking for platforms, about the kind of the crossover was like Can we use it for more than one thing, like a certification? So they're built on the same platform, different front ends, different content. But part of it was we knew that we wanted like a certification for a product to be very product focused. But there are things that you need to understand to be really successful, I think, with making video. For instance, if you have Camtasia and you never learn how to outline or write a script that's going to guide your video creation, it's probably a lot harder to do. But we're not going to, in the certification for Camtasia, we're not going to focus on a ton of stuff about scripts. I think in the current one, there is a little bit, but like we're having this other information that we think is valuable. And just, I mean, complete transparency here. What we really hope from you got to put on your marketing hat and think about like, what's the value? Why is Techsmith going to invest in this? We hope that we're finding people who have not yet even explored Camtasia as a video option to come into Academy and start to learn. And we can hopefully be a trusted advisor in that process. And when they learn that we have a tool that can also help them make their videos, that it becomes like, oh yeah, let me try that out. Like, I don't have an expectation that people will buy because they go to Academy. I hope they see that we're trying to be, valuable in multiple ways in their lives, not just making a tool that they can use.
I think that for myself, like just another Camtasia plug. It's sort of like easiest for me to just kind of get in, do the work I need to do, and then get out. Like, as much as I know, like I have access to other video editors, it seems like Camtasia has been the easiest for me just to quickly get some work done. And like, you'll see like all the TLDC videos on YouTube, all of the intros that are on there are actually, I made them with Camtasia. And so there you go. So having this certification, what would you say, what is the value of it to an individual? And I also wanted to ask, like, are you seeing like a lot of L&D folks, like who gets the certification? Is it primarily like L&D professionals, or do you have another like, vertical or industry that you appeal to?
Yeah. So let's talk about the kind of the value overall of having a certification. There's a couple things. So the only way you can get access to the certification is if currently you buy what's called maintenance. And we did this very kind of strategically, tactically, because when you look at what maintenance does, it's pretty valuable. So let's say, an average copy, single user license of Camtasia costs $250. Maintenance is then, I think, like, I'm going to get the number wrong. I can't remember. It's $50 or $75, something like that. And what it gives you is the next version of the software for free. You get priority support. So if there's a queue and there's a backup, you get to kind of jump to the front of the line. There's something else I'm thinking in there. And then you get certification, right? So you're getting this added value. It's kind of like almost a pseudo subscription, right? The difference between a subscription and maintenance is that at the end of the day, if you say, like, I'm done, I don't want to keep paying, you get to keep the software, where subscription would turn it off. So we really wanted to add more value to that maintenance, because we do see that there's value in people having kind of this continuing relationship with us. It's the way the world's going, software as a service, but we're not ready to fully jump into that model like an Adobe or such. So we wanted to add value there, but also we saw, if you go out to like LinkedIn and other job sites, you start to see more people in their job description saying like, like, what tools do we want you to know? One of them is Camtasia. And we saw this kind of like growth happening. We're like, what, we really should be able to help our users to be able to show that they have knowledge and expertise, versus just saying like, yeah, I know it, because then it's, well, what do you know? So part of the idea here is to create a body of knowledge that we can say, like, if you've done the certification, at least you can, like, anyone can come to us or go look at that and say like, okay, here's what they should be able to kind of basically know and do without any ramp up time. The other thing is companies, they are buying Camtasia and then they're like, we need to figure out how to train people. They don't want to do 2-day classes on, workshops necessarily, but they want to have their people to have access to tutorial content. We have lots of great free tutorial content, but we wanted to give somebody like a full path through that really talks about, like, start here, go here. Here's all. I keep hitting my microphone. I apologize. Too many. I got to talk with my hands. But going through that whole process, start to finish, working through a project, again, giving that knowledge. So that's kind of the value, that why we set out to do it. And I remember going into the CEO's office. She and I were having some conversations, and she's like, okay, we're going to do this. It was like maybe early December. She's like, we're going to launch this next year. And it was like in June. I'm like, okay, let's go. And so, really got a good push to get it going. And I mean, that was a great catalyst, because these things can kind of linger and take a long time. But so that was the value proposition. Your other question was about, help me remember.
Yeah, well, just generally people, like, who's getting it? Who
Right.
gets certification? Is it primarily L&D teams or individuals, or from other countries?
It's a little hard for me to tell exactly, because we don't ask, when you sign up for the certification, we don't ask industry data. There might be some associated, but it would be like when you get it, because you have to have a Techsmith account. I'd probably be able to go and get. It's probably optional data, but what we see is that it's across our user base. People are coming in, and we've had in the Camtasia certification alone, over 10,000 people come in to start it.
Wow.
So, I mean, we see like that's, compared to the number of users, it's still probably a little bit lower. I think there's some promotional stuff we need to do just make people aware, but 10,000 people coming in. And what I'm seeing is there's lots of people, a lot of L&D people, of course, because that's a primary market. We see a lot of educators. Mm-hmm. So both in higher end ed and both secondary education. So like high schools. But we see independent contractors, lots of individuals, government folks coming in. There's one, I won't say the name just because of privacy purposes, but I've seen multiple of this particular government agency coming in. And it was like at a state level, more at a city kind of county level even. So we see all sorts of people coming in who they're like, I need to know Camtasia. And kind of one of the things I think a lot about is most of us, whether you're L&D or marketer or tech support or whatever role you're doing, you probably weren't like a video production major in your life. Mm-hmm. And no one taught you how to think video. Right. Or no one taught you, like, even if you can figure Camtasia out, because it is pretty easy once you get it. But a lot of people are like, they don't have the framework to think about how you start to build a video. I remember being young and thinking like, well, how do they do that? How do you cut things together to make it work? And, how does you piece pieces together and audio and things like that? And so we hope we're helping a lot of those folks who aren't video production people, don't want to be video production people, get a leg up and really go through it and get good value out of it, even if they don't complete it, right? Like it's a lot of content. Right now we're sitting at about 16 hours worth of video content. That's not counting like going through project stuff. That's not counting quizzes. That's just video content. If you watch at 1 time speed, I recommend 1.5 times speed or 2 times speed if you're feeling pretty confident with it. But like, that's a lot of content. So even if you don't finish it, there's still value there about something you probably weren't an expert on in terms of how to use like a function like behaviors or, how do you add a clip speed to a clip to make it go faster or slow it down? So whatever it might be that you're trying to do in Camtasia.
Jane Davids is saying, I like being able to show that I'm certified. It adds credibility. And I totally agree with that. I think that Jane has a very high profile as a Techsmith Camtasia user. So, so let's talk about building the certification. And I'm sort of, one of the reasons why I thought it was important to discuss this was because, as we talked about, even the ATD certifications, even training industry has certifications, just sort of the thought process behind what it takes to actually construct something like this. But how about this? What was the biggest challenge you had in building this certification?
Man, the biggest challenge, it's interesting. I want to clarify something about our certification versus say maybe some of those other certifications. So a lot of certifications, to be an official certification, there's a certain amount of rigor. There's a certain amount of like qualifications, you got to do like certain testing things. So we're much more of a certificate than a full blown kind of legal certification, right? Like, so we didn't try, and we didn't want to make that distinction in terms of like, first of all, there's a ton of cost to really make a proctored kind of psychometric balance certification, right? So that wasn't our intent. Our intent is like, we're the manufacturers. We're going to give you some best practices. We want you to feel confident. We want you to be successful. We think we can do that without going to that kind of that next level.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's an important distinction, because a lot of software that will offer this type of certification, same thing, right? They're not trying to make it an accredited high level, like, really, you've paid some organization to do all the testing, hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of dollars. So one of the challenges was getting around that barrier, because one of the things I've been thinking about certification since 2007. Like, this is not a new thought for me. Like, the CEO kicked it off and like, we're going to do it. But like, there had been years of thinking and lots of barriers to like, but it should be this, it should be that, it should, how are we going to deliver it? So there's lots of those questions that all bundled together, I think, made it tough, right? Like, how can we feel confident in what we're delivering to our audience to make sure that we feel like they're going to get the value that they need, and that we're going to provide real meaningful learning? Even if someone already knows, are they going to get something out of it? And so from there, I mean, the building process, once we kicked off with the CEO and her like direction to go, we just made the decision that rather than build internal, like me build it or having someone else on the team build it, that we were going to work with a vendor. And so we did some call for proposals in terms of certain vendors that we knew, got some really great proposals back, made a decision on one of them. We ended up going with a gentleman. His name's Daniel Park. He runs Dapper Text. It's a boutique kind of screencasting writing firm. Daniel is actually a former employee of Techsmith, so he is intimate. Wrote a book, multiple books about Camtasia, the definitive guide to Camtasia. I think started in version 4 or 5. Wow. So he's kept up with the software. So just he had a lot of expertise, brought some different perspectives than say I had on how you go about creating great screencasts and things like that. So once we got him in place, we knew we kind of had an outline of what basic things, like what were the curricula topics that we wanted to make sure we covered, because Camtasia is a big program. And if you go through the certification, there are a few things that aren't covered. Like, we don't talk about green screen. And so, we really had to make decisions based on how much content we're going to deliver versus like what should be there and what shouldn't be there. And that was there were some conversations like, green screen's a very popular feature, right? And people that use it love it. People that don't know about it, should they know about it? Yeah, but we had to just make a lot of decisions knowing that, like, what are we going to do? And then there was the style questions, right? Like, Daniel Park's style is different than our tutorial styles. Our tutorials are usually pretty quick. They're very edited in terms of like very clean. There's no extra overhead. And Daniel has a very conversational style. And he tends to be very kind of deliberate in his talking. And I slowed down when I said that because I could channel Daniel for a second.
Yeah, reminded.
And like, for me, I'm going to be honest, like, I watched his videos, like I reviewed like 3 times every video. So 16 hours times 3.
Yeah.
I'd put them in like 2 times speed a lot of times, because I didn't need like third time. I'm not watching for all the content. I'm watching for like fixes and things like that. And I was worried. I was like really, really worried. It's like, oh, it's going to be too slow. It's too much stuff. But the feedback we've gotten is overwhelming, very positive. And I think what it is I'm not a beginner. I'm not just coming to it. And so like trying to figure out all these pieces is what made it difficult. There wasn't like one big hurdle, like, oh, we had to decide on this. It was like lots of these decisions that come with creating something that has that much content and that many kind of moving pieces. I mean, just even, building out the back end wasn't that difficult, but there's challenges with that, like making sure you've got all the text in the right place, make sure you've got all the right projects connected to the right lesson, and you've grouped things together right. You've got like the right thumbnail, like just all those little things that just take kind of this cognitive load and overhead of time. And then from there, kind of now as we progress, because we launched in 2018 with Camtasia 2018, we decided for 2019 that we were going to just do updates. We didn't want to do everything again because of cost, but also because the product didn't change that much. A lot of it was still valuable and still just perfectly good as it is. And so then it's like, well, how do you update something? Do you give people like 2 courses, like 2018, 2019? And that felt like kind of a lot considering most of the content was going to be the same. So we just said, we're just going to make a decision of everything is based on the current version. We're not going to worry about 2018 version. If someone's not on that now, they're still on that version, they want the certification, it's pretty much the same. It's going to be a few differences. We'll probably call those out. And now we're going into 2020's version, and we've decided we're going to do a full update. We've thrown everything. We're not throwing it away, but we're taking everything and saying we're going to redo it from beginning. And partly because there's enough things changing that it feels like it's warranted. But also because we feel like we've learned in 2 years a bunch about like the fact that 15, 16 hours for someone who's new. And if you start at course 1, you don't ever actually produce until course 9 and like 15 hours in, 14 hours in. That's a long time for you to have to get to actually do your first production. So we're trying to think about it much more from a build it so that you can do a couple different little projects.
Right.
We're also looking at making it 2 certifications. So rather than have 15 hours of all the content, there'll be, I think what we'll probably call the Explorer level and the Voyager level. And the Explorer level is much more basic, kind of the basic kind of fundamentals, things that you need to know just to get going. Still a good amount of content, lots there, very rich. But then the rest of it will be much more now that I've done 1 or 2, I've done 5 of them, I want to enhance what I'm doing, get better at kind of some of the things that will make it, for lack of a better word, a little bit more fancy, a little bit more engaging, motion, behaviors, animations, some other stuff. So
love it.
Really,
I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. I want to just read off a couple comments here that we have in chat. Alan is saying, getting into the beginner mindset can be difficult when you feel like you mastered the program, get bogged down with the extras. And Jane says, for me, speeding it up to watch was useful, but if English isn't your first language or a beginner, but if English not first language or a beginner, the pace was great. And so let me ask this about, if you potentially are going to have like 2 different certifications, what's the mindset behind deciding like, okay, this is enough for, the one, and then, and this is what we need to have for the other. How do you consider that? When do you know when to stop? Like, the information.
Well, we don't know. We don't know when to stop, really. The thing is, we're trying to make the best decisions based on the data that we have.
Yeah.
But we're also looking at it from a perspective of like, especially in that beginner kind of what we're calling the Explorer course, is really trying to understand like, what does someone need to know to make that first step? So there's a great author. Her name is Kathy Sierra. She actually wrote books for O'Reilly for a little while, I believe.
What's her name?
So Kathy, she had a blog that was a really fantastic blog, and the name's escaping me right now, but terrible reasons she had to shut it down. But why she was writing, she ended up touching on, she wrote about programming, like learning to program. But during that, she touched on some L&D stuff. And there's this one thing that's really stuck with me, and it's been a guiding kind of lodestar for me since 2006, 2007. And she called it the kick-ass curve, and apologize for the language for anyone. But basically the idea being is that people, when they start, they kind of go up the curve, they can start to become a beginner, and they kind of level out, and then it kind of, their skill drops a little bit as they're like, oh, I'm pretty good. They get into this valley, and then it goes, eventually they can potentially go up and become an expert, right? Most people get stuck in the valley, and there's this kind of level of like, we just want to give them enough so that they can be successful with whatever they're going to do. But, like a good video, you don't necessarily need to have animations. So that's probably not going to be in the Explorer course. There might be like a zoom and pan because you're dealing with screen content. And so like the idea being that you want to, zoom in so someone can see clearly what you're talking about. Like if you're showing an interface, or like if I was going to do something with showing people how to do a crowdcast, like maybe zooming in on the comments or something. So that's like fundamental to a screencast. And so we'll show that, but we won't show like, having things zip across the screen or the behaviors doing fancy stuff like that, because that's great. And I think people should understand that, but it's not a beginner kind of that I'm just getting going, making my first videos fundamentals. And the two will very much build on each other. We expect that kind of our anticipation is that some people will go through the Explorer course, and that's all they'll do, right? But at least we've gotten them further along. Other people will go through this Voyager course only because I don't need the beginner stuff. Like Jane, maybe she'll say like, hey, I am perfectly content not doing that because I know already. I've got my previous certification. And then some people we hope will go through that whole journey and really, have leveled up their skills enough that when they go to work and show people are like, hey, that's pretty impressive. How'd you do that? And like, Camtasia, it works well for me. And here's how I learned it.
Mm-hmm. Is there a particular part of the certification series that maybe you think is you're particularly proud of?
I'm proud that we got it done. I mean, like I mentioned December, we said got the go ahead. End of December, we got to go ahead. We launched in June. So it's in 6 months, we built the entire first version of the certification. And then later that year, I guess it was the next year. So just in 2019, my colleague, Guy Larkham, who's an instructional designer and does other stuff here at Techsmith, he worked with Tim Slade to build the Snagit certification. So the fact that we've just done this and we've gotten 2 out there and we're now we're iterating, to me, that feels like the win. I mean, I'm just proud of all the stuff that, maybe it's silly, but it's like, it's so great to have it out there and to have done it. Like after talking about it literally since 2007, to then all of a sudden see it come together in like 6 months, man, to me, that's what's awesome. And the content is really great. It's really useful. I'm happy with that. I love whenever somebody comes in and says like, now I feel like I can do this, or I feel more successful. To me, that's the win. I probably have, like, in terms of content, more personal pride in some of the Academy stuff, because that's been much more like I've been more a lead kind of design ish on the certification. Academy, I've been in the thick of it. So there's some more pride stuff in there. And I would say that's really cool. Another thing, I guess, since we're talking certification, the Snagit certification.
Yeah. And
there's
a Snagit.
Very different tact.
Yeah.
Very different approach, right? Like it's not about like, because Snagit's not a do one project. It's like multiple things. And so when Guy was working on the design for that, they looked at like, okay, how do we help people do the jobs that they have to do? Like whether you're doing technical writing or feedback, you got to give feedback to someone. That's a job that you do, but Snagit can do all those things. So they started to put some paths in for you to, you can decide which way you go and still get your certification if you just take one path versus like 4 paths.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you right now, like, just from recent experience, especially, I work, of course, for O'Reilly Learning Company, that has a big learning platform and also hosts, major events across the world. And, we just had to cancel our big data and AI Strata event that's taking place in a couple of weeks. But what we're seeing is that there's this new emphasis on folks looking at certifications, especially, or we offer a lot of prep sort of materials through the learning platform. And then, and a lot of the companies that are out there now they're not as focused on conferences, but more focused on trainings. That is where the budgets are going. And so I do think that, and I've just come to realize this just through doing this series, is that I think certifications are becoming a lot more important to people. And I know that if I was doing some hiring out there for somebody that, that had some experience with Camtasia, seeing that, that you were certified at whatever level with that particular, software, I would, that would put you at the top of the list if I was interested in bringing you in.
So one thing I'll say is I love conferences. I mean, I love going on, but for me, it's less about the sessions. I mean, there's great sessions, don't get me wrong, but to me, conferences have become about the people and connecting and learning what people are doing, hearing their stories. But if you really want to get deep on something, like you really want to become a master at a tool or a process, you don't get that at a conference. You just like, unless it maybe in the workshops that they offer in advance, but like when you're going to a conference, I think it's much more about expanding your mind and, hearing new ideas that kind of get you down a path to say like, okay, now I know enough that I can go research and learn more. Whereas like taking a certification, whether it's one of ours or, I know Adobe offers certifications, or there's tons of certifications out there like ATD and the others. That's just going to give you so much like focused, deep knowledge that's where the value is. And, and you can go, if you go through even if you know the Camtasia pretty well, my guess is if you went through the certification, you're going to pick up some tips, right? You're going to learn some things that maybe you didn't know, because most people, I think, and I'm like this, I self-learn most of the software that I use, right? No one taught me how to use Outlook. I'm sure I use things completely wrong or in a way that's not efficient. But these types of trainings, I think, and certifications are going to be really good at that. And then you can build your T-shaped person, right? Like I'm sure we've talked about that on TLDC at some point, that like we got this kind of broad experience, but then we go deep in an area. Well, certifications are going to allow you to go deep.
Yeah, no, that is a great way of describing the value of having a certification. So let's say, and Alexa's talking about how she uses Snagit all day, and she's even using it for an SOP right now. And I'm definitely going to look into that Snagit certification, just because I use it so much, and I would love to know more about it. I don't have the maintenance plan, but I can probably check with my IT guys and see if they could.
Yeah, and Snagit maintenance is like stupid cheap. It's like $18 or something like that, $20. I mean, it's like ridiculously cheap to get all this information. And like I said, if you know Tim Slade, he's a fantastic e-learning designer, speaks a lot on great topics. We worked with him, and it's something I think we're both very proud of.
Yeah. So how do you guys promote the certification at all? Do you guys have a strategy for that?
So I've got mixed feelings about this, but yes, there's some, like when you go through the store to purchase, you can add it to the cart. So there's stuff that comes up about that. We have some pages out there, but we haven't done a lot to be like out there in your face, like, hey, we have certification. I think there's talk about how we can do that more, because we do see it as a really enticing value, hopefully, for that maintenance package. And, the benefit is not just ours. Like, sure, we sell you a little bit more, but like we make better users, and you get to get the benefit of really understanding the products in a way that are hopefully deeper and more meaningful, so that when you do have your projects, you've maybe shaved some time off how fast you're able to do them, or they're better quality, or you just, you've got a better handle. It's not as big of a stressor to go and start, I got to make a video, it's so hard. Well, no, it really doesn't have to be. And you'll have some ideas of how to do that well.
I know. So on your LinkedIn profile, you have your skill jar. What was it? It was a credential. And then, of course, you've got your Camtasia, your 2018 and 2019 certifications listed. Do you have any other certifications, or do you put any emphasis at all on that kind of thing? And it's weird because, like, even for me, I have been known, like at one point when I was working at the eLearning Guild, who was it? It was Steve Wexler, who was the old research director. He told me that he called me the floating toolbar. That you can just drop anywhere, and then you just press whatever button, and I was gonna do it. And I totally agree with it. I just was I knew how to do a bunch of things, but I wasn't particularly excellent at any one thing. But then at the same time, I'm like thinking I should have gotten like certifications for all this stuff that I know. I mean,
Yeah.
But what's your personal opinion on that stuff?
So I don't have any other certifications. The skill jar one was really interesting. I was at their event when they announced it, and I'm like, that night I went and got it because I'm like, I know this pretty well. I've spent a lot of time in this tool. And I felt like that was valuable because it was something I'm actively working in, right? Like not every day, but like especially during kind of build times, I'm really deep in it. But I don't have a lot of other certifications, and partly I think as I've looked across what things I need, like I've kind of toyed with the idea of certain things, but like some of the ATD ones, I'm like, well, not really. I don't really do a ton of like instructional design. So some of that stuff is like, it doesn't quite fit. Then I've thought about doing some like, I'd love to get like better at things like Illustrator and some of this kind of other tools out there. But I'm like, God, I'm not using them all the time. So I'm trying to find that balance. I try to find that balance of like, when do I need to really go deep? And there's probably more I should do, but I feel like I'm like you. I'm probably a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, at some point, I'd really love to get like a Google SEO certification, right? Like, because personal belief is that the things that we're doing with customer education, whether for Techsmith or for any organization, are going to continue to be influenced by what's happening with SEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want your customers to find things like the Academy or whatever things you're trying to teach your customers, SEO is going to play a huge part in that. And so I think there's a whole bunch of marketing things that really would value L&D folks, because even if you're not doing marketing, there's implications, right? Like, how does someone find your training? Or besides telling them, like, you have to take this training, how else do they know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jane is saying sometimes it's the cost of them that holds her back from getting them. And I do think that, one of the reasons why I never really went after this stuff was because, like when I was at the Guild, I was there for 12 years. I didn't need to add anything to my resume or add anything to, a LinkedIn profile, because I was there. I was, I was set. But now, like where I tend to also do some freelance work and of course TLDC and things, I have kind of reconsidered, like with the gig economy and everything, being able to have some of these, potentially just ways of displaying that I'm, proficient with this particular tool. So that's pretty interesting. Let's see. Yeah. Susan is saying costs and additional time needed to complete it. That's a huge thing. That's an absolutely huge thing. The one thing that it really intrigues me, and, just from a personal perspective about the Camtasia one, is I really want to get good at it. I want to be able to be really good at Camtasia. So getting a certification in it, I know that I'm going to acquire a certain amount of knowledge that is going to say, yeah, he knows this. And so that for me is a big deal, not just to have it in my LinkedIn profile or whatever, but to actually be able to use it. Because honestly, like, I do these things for the beginning of the TLDC, like YouTube videos, but then I've actually used it to make like quick band videos, whenever we have shows coming up. So it's like, let me just whip up a quick Camtasia video of, my band playing live with one of our songs in the background. And it works great for that. I just love it.
So one thing that I think that's true about certifications, that I think whether it's ours or someone else's, is that the thing that's not going to do for you is unless someone's really structured it and they've got time for this, so like they, build it into the program, what you're not going to get is that practice, right? Like we have practice files, you can do that, but you still have to practice. You still have to make a video. You have to make your videos. And that's the truth about learning these skills. Like we can deliver the information to you. And I think we've got a great structure for doing that. I think it's great information. Hopefully you have a desire, but if you don't have time to practice, or you're not putting forth the effort to apply those things, whether it's a band video or some other video, certification really is not going to mean much, because as we know, you're going to watch a bunch of stuff. It's going to go bloop, bloop, right through the years. And you're going to be like, in 6 months, you're not going to remember those things. You're going to still have the paper, but it's like, oh man. So I think really just whatever certification you're doing is build in the time for practice. And I think hard to do with software, right? Because we can't dictate anything beyond your relationship with the videos. But whereas like an ATD or a Guild or some of those certifications, they're going to have different things that are going to be able to do that. So, but what we assume is you're going to be motivated enough to apply the things you're not just learning Camtasia because it's fun. Hopefully it's okay. It's not terrible, but you're going to be doing it because you really want to kind of upskill and you apply the things that you're learning.
Yeah. Like Alexa's saying that she did the Captivate certification last year, and I would love to hear from other people that are in the live audience. If you guys have some other, certifications, I'd love to see what you guys have done, and and if they've helped your career at all. And with that, I want to just say, Matt, thanks for talking with us about this. It's really neat to hear sort of the thinking behind behind building one and sort of constructing it and the reasons why, and even just learning more about, just the Camtasia and Snagit for this one. I hope that this series and I hope this episode has inspired some of you folks out there to look into getting certifications. I really do believe that it feels like they're gonna become a lot more prominent. And I do think like companies like Techsmith and ATD and everybody else out there should probably market those certifications a little bit more. I think there's still a little gray area out there about like how to market a certification. I know that a lot of how we are educating ourselves is changing. So being able to complete these certifications at home and on your own time is just going to become a lot more common. And and that's it. So thanks everybody. Let's see. Oh, let's read some of these out. Let's see. David says, this was fun. I just may have to get certified. Ann did a Captivate certification. And Ann's now going into Articulate. Great idea. Alan has LinkedIn Learning certifications. And that's it. All right.
So one last thing I'll say, if you're an expert, if you feel like you're an expert at Camtasia, one of the things we built in, which I think is really nice, is a test-only version. So if you feel like go take the test. Like if you don't pass, you can go jump into courses. But I think that's a really nice option because we have people that are pretty much power users. However, the challenge with working with someone else is that if their viewpoint is a little different in the world than your viewpoint, like how to do something, you might get an answer wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So,
there you go. Great advice.
Luis, anyways, thank you for having me here and being able to join with you guys and talk about this because it's a pretty cool thing, I think.
I like how
we be part of.
I just noticed that we both have blue plaid going on this morning. I didn't even call that out.
Blue Plaid Day, guys.
Next week we have, or starting tomorrow, actually, Rance Green with the storytelling playlist. Yes, we're going to talk about instructional story design. Don't miss that one. That was going to be great. Starts at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, and the rest of that storytelling playlist is absolutely fantastic for this month. So join us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.